Powhaus.
Pastor, gut zu deinem neuen Rock.
The Holga camera was designed by the Chinese to accommodate a surplus of 120 film, which was more prevalent than 35mm at the time. Most 120 film cameras are generally expensive, so this was to be the cheap option, particularly for youth and the working class of China. Sometime after this, 35mm film became more available, and the company making Holgas sought a new market for these inexpensive cameras and went international. Professional photographers found the unintentional flaws, like the vignetting and other light leaks, lack of precision, blurs, and other distortions to be artistically pleasing. These same photographers, along with many photography teachers and professors, liked the way that the simplicity of the design and handling allowed the photographer to focus on the actual shot, the framing, the subject matter, and the perspective. Over the past few decades, the camera has become somewhat of a trend and has led many to find a new appreciation for film, even such that the iPhone has come up with several new applications that mimic the Holga look. The quintessential Holga camera is the 120S, which has a plastic lens, fixed shutter speed, simplistic focus, hot shoe, the spot you add your flash to, standard tripod thread, and 2-position f-stop switch. This is the shutter release, the very button you push to take a picture. After almost 3 decades, several models of the Holga have surfaced, and we hope to give you an overview so that when you go to purchase your Holga, you understand what it is you are getting. In later episodes, we will show you how to actually use your Holga camera. We are going to divide the Holga up into 3 major categories, according to the type of film each camera uses. Otherwise, the major differences between models are the upgrades that became available later, such as the bulb setting, or built-in flashes, or the replacing of the plastic lens for a glass lens. Standard Holga is the 120S, which, as the name designates, uses 120 film. 120 film is larger than the more familiar 35mm, and is one of the nicest attributes of the Holga. Also referred to as medium format, the larger negative allows for higher resolution. In addition to the Holga 120S are the following cameras. The Holga. This is a Holga 120S, but with a Japanese supplied glass lens. It has since been discontinued. If you want this camera, you can also purchase the 120GN, which is essentially the same thing. The Holga 120GFN is this same camera but with a built-in flash. And the Holga 120GCFN is the same thing but with a color flash. The Holga 120N is much more available than the 120S and is a better version. It is updated with the same plastic lens, but also with a tripod mount, a bulb exposure mode, an improved film counter window switch, and a foam insert to provide film spool tension when winding your film. It also has an additional 6x6 film mass. The Holga 120SF is a standard Holga 120S with a built-in flash. The Holga 120FN is a Holga 120N with a built-in flash. And the Holga 120CFN is the Holga 120FN with a built-in color flash. Recently, there has surfaced a few new Holga cameras in the market. One is called the 120TLR. It is a Holga 120CFN, but with a twin lens reflex viewfinder in lieu of the standard viewfinder, and it has a relocated color flash. The Holga 120GTLR is the Holga 120 twin lens reflex, but with the glass lens. Finally, we have the Holga 120PC and the Holga 120WPC. The Holga 120PC is a pinhole version of the 120N, using a 6x4x5cm or a 6x6cm format. The Holga 120WPC is a wide pinhole version of the 120N, using 6x9 or 6x12cm format. Finally, there are 2 new interesting 3D additions to the family. The Holga 120N 3D, which is a Holga 120N but in stereo, and the Holga 120PC-3D, which is a pinhole stereo camera. for creating 3D images. The Holga 135 is our Holga for 35mm film. The Holga 135 BC is a Holga already made for 35mm film, with the plastic lens and the same lens mount of the Holga 120, but with a 45mm lens. BC means black corner. The 135 BC model has a built-in transparent mask, which creates a vignetting effect. The Holga 135 PC is the pinhole version of our Holga 135. The Holga 135 AFX is a more automatic version of the Holga 135. It has an infrared autofocus, automatic film load, built-in pop-up flash, and interlock shutter release. The Holga K202 is a silly little kitty camera in the shape of a cat face with blinking lights and a cat sound. The Holga K200N is a 35mm film point-and-shoot Holga with color flash and a dismountable fisheye. The Holga K200NM is the same thing, plus a fisheye viewer and a multiple exposure button. Finally, we have the Holga 135 TIM, which is a half-frame 35mm Holga, and the Holga 135 TLR, which is our Holga 35mm with the twin lens reflex. Finally, there has been a recent edition of the Holga, the 110, which uses a popular format from the 1970s and the 1980s called 110 film. It is most difficult to find, but available on the internet and some specialty shops. There are only two versions of the Holga 110s, the Micro 110, which is the standard 26mm 110 Holga, and the Holga 110 TFS, which is a 110 camera with a switchblade standard and a panoramic format. These are the ready-made Holgas found on the market today. However, you can modify your camera in several ways, or you could take the simplest of models and modify it yourself instead of paying more money for the market modification, such as turning one of your Holgas into a pinhole camera, or formatting your 120 Holga to shoot 35mm film. These modifications are easy, and in later episodes we will show you how to make these modifications yourself. In addition, we should mention an accessory that has turned the Holga into what is referred to as a Holgaroid. It is the Polaroid CB80 camera back for Holgas. Polaroid introduced the camera back, the CB80, for the popular Holga cameras. It was designed to use Type 80 peel-apart films. The back included a diopter lens, a battery holder, 6x6 mask, dark slide, and featured a tripod mount. It was most often sold with the Holga 120 SF, hence the included battery holder. However, the back can be purchased separately. The CB80 can be used on any Holga 120 series camera. When first introduced, the image produced by the CB80 did not cover the full frame of the Type 80 film. Shortly after its release, a modified CB80 called the CB80 full frame was introduced that matched the size of the film. Due to the design of the back, the Holga viewfinder is completely obscured when the two are used together. An external Holga viewfinder can be purchased that mounts onto the CB80 and provides an accurate view of the scene. In 2007, a new Polaroid back made by A-Power was released that is nearly identical to the CB80. The biggest improvement to this version is that it now takes Type 660 films in addition to Type 80. We realize that this is a lot of information to digest. You can review this information in the web article that this video is embedded in at the Powhaus website, which is at www.powhaus.com. Keep watch on the Powhaus website. We will review other film camera series and post more how-to shorts to help you discover or rediscover film.
Powhaus.